here we go. Tony, Dr. Nader, man, first of all, again, good morning. Thank you for being here. Really excited to get into the topic at hand. But yeah, you know what? Maybe before we even, dive into consciousness and all that, if you just want to introduce yourself, let people know who you are, why you're talking about this, all that good stuff. Floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Osi, for having me. It's wonderful. Um, I am a medical doctor by training and a scientist. I was at Harvard and MIT and got a degree in brain and cognitive science. My specialty was in neurology and medicine mainly. I did study some psychiatry, but at the same time, I was looking to see how we can develop the full potential of human life from both the mental and physical side. And so I learned different techniques of meditation and got most fascinated by transcendental meditation, which is a very simple technique that one practices morning and evening, doesn't require any change in lifestyle. It's very easy, even children can do it. So I thought this is fabulous. But besides all this practicality side, it has brought real interest in me to dive deep into the nature of life and the mind-body relation, which is primary mind or body. Does the body create the mind, or the mind is more primary, or what is then the essential aspects of life? And went into trying to understand the essence of things, where we are, how we are, why we're doing what we're doing. And I lived through a number of things, including a civil war, changes, transformations, travel, situations and circumstances which are very challenging on a personal level, on a social level. And transcendental meditation gave me such a powerful strength and clarity to overcome them that I thought I should spend more time. And actually, it ended up all my time and all my life and studying with the founder of Transcendental Meditation, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And then he asked me when he left his body to take care of his entire movement or whatever he structured in programs of meditation and Ayurveda, health, good life, well-being, flourishing, diet routines, etc. So all the alternative things that can support us and give us strengths, and particularly the field of consciousness and the relationship between consciousness and matter, intelligence and physiology. And so here I am. I wrote a book about it. It's called Consciousness is All There Is, describing the essence of life as being consciousness. And now we have a new book coming out. It's called Super Habits for Success. That is on a practical level to make people's habits right. And today as we are launching this and preparing for it, the United Nations has decided unanimously to have a World Meditation Day on the 21st of December. And I'm very honored that I was invited to be the keynote speaker for this first inaugural event, or to celebrate this proclamation and resolution.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and congrats on that. Like I was saying just before we recorded, yeah, I think that's a very necessary day and recognition to have. And again, at the current state of the world, I think we could all use a little bit more meditation. I'm actually curious, something that like kept going through my mind as I was reading your book. Um, I almost like started getting a little upset. I was like, man, why do they not teach this stuff when we're kids? Like, like because you become an adult, and if you're not in this field, like if you're not, in a field that talks about things related to the brain or psychology in any way, you're maybe you'll stumble upon the topic of consciousness, on YouTube or something, or maybe that one friend who likes psychedelics quite a bit or something like that. But like, it just boggles my mind that this just the conversation about our existence and what it means to be conscious isn't introduced to us like earlier on in life. Like, have you ever wondered the same thing?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the answer maybe we can try to give it an answer that life evolves, humans, human life, human rights, understanding who we are, our position in the universe evolves. We have evolved as a species. There were some great traditions and cultures that got high inspiration, be it from an introspective level, which means they dive into themselves and try to understand what's happening, or from an objective level, trying to understand how the laws of nature function, how nature works, what makes the apple fall, what makes the earth go around its axis day and night, and like that. And in the mix of all of this, beliefs and clashes of cultures and traditions and all of that, but we gradually come to realize that those things that are actually effective and efficient and that work keep surviving and coming up on the surface. And so, as we have evolved, we are going to learn more and more, and we look forward to even more than that, so that society really understands this phenomenon of consciousness, this reality of consciousness, actually. The phenomenon is the outer world. And so we expect and we hope that education will be more and more teaching what consciousness is, the ability to develop consciousness, the importance of the mind. At the past, somebody who had some problem, they used to consider them witches or, burn them at the stake or, consider them, and they had just some little trouble in their nervous system, maybe, or not even that, they were misunderstood. And today we know, no, there is science, there is logic to the mind as well as to the body, and the importance of what makes the mind and its importance is coming along. So I'm hopeful.
Yeah, yeah. No, I like that. I really like that optimism. And yeah, I remember the first time um consciousness was a topic of conversation for me. It was like 1 a.m. In my college dorm, and I was, I it was just one of those like it was my freshman year of college, and as most people know, when you're introduced to like certain higher thoughts in college, it can be really funny pondering some of these things late at night. Maybe you've had a few drinks or something like that. But for me, yeah, I was basically what, 18, 17 or 18 when that was introduced to me. And I remember just this in a good way, like feeling powerless, but in a freeing way, and realizing like it made me contemplate things like free will and what is it that we're really in charge of and in control of and things like that. I'm just curious for you, like do you remember like the first time you even came across the word consciousness, like and or the concept at all, and like what that did for you? Because I mean, clearly you've made a life out of trying to understand it, but like, do you remember your earliest thoughts on consciousness?
That's a very nice question. It's just I'm trying to go back, travel back in time
Yeah.
with you. And I always believe that there is something more than the body, than the physical body. I didn't necessarily call it consciousness. At the beginning, it was like maybe the mind, or from a belief or religious, a little bit spiritual perspective, something like the soul or the spirit, something which is not physical, which is not material, that actually stays maybe even when the body drops. The kind of belief we have in spirituality and different religions and all of that. And what it was exactly was still a mystery in my mind. And so, investigating the mind, which is actually another aspect of consciousness, the mind is not necessarily directly just consciousness. We can discuss that if you want. But the question is that, we have a mind, we have thoughts, we have intellect, we analyze thoughts, we have feelings, that is emotions and affect. We have cognition on the level of realizing things. But I never really thought about consciousness as a reality until I learned transcendental meditation. And I do remember now that I've taken the time to prepare for this, to really find that time. And I do remember that when I learned transcendental meditation, I closed my eyes and learned this technique, which is very simple. And suddenly I was diving deep and deep into myself, and I discovered that there is some level kind of similar to yours intuitively that you had, but for me it was so profound and contrasting, where I found I was awake but of conscious of nothing. So conscious of consciousness, just being conscious. So being conscious without a memory, without an object, without a thought and consciousness was a real thing that I actually experienced. And so that kind of triggered my attention. Is consciousness something real? Is it something that exists? What is it? And so I then gradually, started to realize that without consciousness, we have nothing, because as a doctor, at that time, I was still a pre-medical student when I learned transcendental meditation and then went through medicine. And then, of course, found that people, who are not conscious have different states of consciousness, uh, vegetative state, minimally conscious state, comatic state, and all of that. They have different gradations of consciousness. And when they are not conscious, and even when you go through anesthesia, if you have a surgery or something, you're not there anymore.
Mm.
And therefore, what is that consciousness without which nothing really makes any sense to us? So without our consciousness, nothing makes any sense. We can be the wealthiest person, the poorest person, the happiest on a regular life, the healthiest, the whatever, the most knowledgeable. But when we have no consciousness, all of this is nothing, means nothing, disappears, it vanishes. It's meaningless. So consciousness started to, get me interested, and many of us fall into this in different ways. Your experience is really fascinating because there are many saints, great saints, in history that had these moments of awakening. Saint Augustine or other cultures, in Buddhism, in Confucianism, in Hinduism, and all of that, even though in the ancient Indian culture where Maharishi comes from, this becomes like it's part of their culture. It's a systematic way of understanding reality from the perspective of consciousness. But these people, even who are non-believers in things that are not physical or not material, have these moments of awakening, like an epiphany, they call it, or a moment of, oh, wow, like Ossi waking up at 18 years old and feeling free, and yet, in that sense, powerless to describe it, which means there is something there which is bigger, which is beautiful, which is freeing, and that's my consciousness. And
Wow.
so it's really a beautiful thing. And transcendental meditation allows us to experience that in a systematic way.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Man, I love that. And I'm curious too, like, because obviously, what you go into in your book, you talk about like the different schools of thought within consciousness, and you take it a step further, and you believe that consciousness isn't just something that comes from the brain, that consciousness is just everything. Can you maybe talk about those different schools of thought in terms of what consciousness is and like how you got to define it in your way?
Absolutely. Um, See, and if we get to science and philosophy, and now they are kind of on the field of consciousness trying to merge because the logic is similar. So we ask ourselves, we have this consciousness, which is non-physical, non-material in itself. It is what it feels like to be Ossi, what it feels like to be Tony, what it feels like to be something else, whatever it is.
Hmm.
and what it feels like to have a feeling of joy or happiness and pain and or whatever, even, the redness, what you experience on a subjective, very personal level is one reality. And then there is the physical material reality, which is the mechanical reality, where, for example, we experience things that happen that go through the eyes. They kind of trigger something, and they trigger something in the nervous system. And so there are these two aspects. We can call them consciousness and the body, or we can call them mind and matter. We can give them different names. The name is not important. So there is that thing which is very subjective, very personal, very, and feeling, experiencing love, what it is that I experience on a very personal level. And there is the mechanical material world. Now, there are these two things. And philosophers and scientists have often, at the beginning, thought that they are actually two separate things. So it's famous that Descartes, in his Cartesian vision, he said that there is a mind, a spirit, and there is a physical entity, and they are two different things, and somehow they interact with each other. How can something non-material interact with something material, and how vice versa? Nobody had an idea. He didn't have either. He thought the pineal gland might do it, but it turned out it's not really necessarily the way it works.
Hmm.
So there are two things then. But then as science advanced and philosophy advanced, nobody, in terms of actual modern scientists or modern philosopher believes that there are two things. They believe that there is only one thing.
Hmm.
And here you have two groups. One group that says that all there is matter, physical reality. So somehow there is some energy that came, some explosion of energy. From where it came, how it came, we don't know. Nobody knows. The Big Bang, whatever. And suddenly it started cooling down, and then particles appeared, and then particles joined together to form molecules, and then molecules formed cells. Cells came together, formed tissues. Tissues created organs. Organs developed and created the whole physiology. And then it got more and more complex and more organized. And you have a human nervous system. And then maybe consciousness suddenly appeared.
Hmm.
And that is what they call the immersion theory. Emergence means it emerges from something else. So consciousness, in this case, in this understanding, is a phenomenon of how the nervous system works, how the physiology works. And therefore, you get an experience of consciousness. So that is one theory, which is called the physicalist theory, because it says that physicality is primary.
Hmm.
Okay. The problem with this is you cannot, and nobody has been able, even today, after heavy research and deep and trying to understand how consciousness can actually emerge from something physical, nobody has even a clue. There are theories, but none of them is convincing. So to tell you, even the greatest philosopher or scientist, if they try to explain you, keep in your mind that they have no idea. Nobody has proven how consciousness can emerge from physicality and mechanical, chemical, electrical activities of whatever complicated nervous system there is. They believe in it, but it's only a belief. It's almost a scientific dogma that this
Hmm.
is the case. Okay, that's one side. Now, how about the other side? And that's the side that I personally have investigated and try to find the logic for so we can explain. The other side is that there is a field of consciousness. So consciousness is a field, like an electromagnetic field or a gravitational field or different forces fields and energy fields. Consciousness is like a field. Although it is non-material and non-physical in its essence, it's non-material. So it's nothing in terms of physicality, but it's real in terms of an existence of consciousness as a primary aspect of life.
Hmm.
Now, the problem becomes how this consciousness appears as matter, appears as the physical reality. And that is what I have spent years on studying and researching. And that's what is in the book Consciousness is All There is to explain that consciousness is primary and what is the logic from all kinds of directions, including modern science. What is the logic that allows us to say that, yes, consciousness can be primary and everything else, even physicality, is an experience within consciousness. It's different layers and levels of experience within consciousness. So depending on your level of consciousness, you can experience different aspects of reality. Depending on your construct of consciousness, you can see something from one angle, from one perspective, or another perspective. So I have expanded the definition of consciousness from being human-like consciousness only to any sensing, detecting, feeling, interacting is, in my proposal, in my paradigm, is an experience of consciousness. And therefore, consciousness now has a huge range from tiny consciousness to huge consciousness.
Interesting. How do you think like just inherent like being human inherently maybe limits our understanding of consciousness? Because I feel like you're where you're headed, like you're trying to understand it from this non-human point of view, and you're trying to like remove us as this like main character of consciousness. But I'm just curious, like how you think just even contemplating this as a human maybe even limits our understanding of consciousness.
Yeah, the interesting part is humans have consciousness and they can go through different states of consciousness. So we know that already, obviously, when we fall asleep, it's a different state of consciousness. When we're dreaming, the world is unreal. You know, the reality during the dream is real. If the tiger comes, jumps on you, you get scared, your heart rate increases, and you feel it's very real. But the gun of the waking state of consciousness, which maybe you have put next to you when doing a safari or something, is not going to kill the tiger of the dream state of consciousness. And if you're in a dream state of consciousness and you have a gun, it's not going to kill the tiger that is in the waking state of consciousness. So we have different realities in different states of consciousness. And even in the waking state of consciousness, we have different levels of awareness, different levels of ability to perceive. When we are under stress, for example, we have narrow vision. We see things based on fight or flight or freeze, if you like, situation. So that is what we've inherited in order to protect us. It's not the time to think of philosophy and of consciousness or anything. When you're under danger, you have to react, but your consciousness narrows down. When you are more settled and more relaxed, your consciousness starts expanding. You start seeing bigger and further out and have a more broad understanding and capabilities. So humans do have all these ranges of consciousness: sleep, dream, waking. Even waking, you can be drowsy, you can be clear, you can expand your awareness, you can transcend, you can have these moments, as you mentioned, of inner calm and freedom and like that, and awareness expanding, feeling one with everything, feeling one with everyone, feeling great and happy and like that. So all of these are different states of consciousness. And what is great is we as humans, because we have all this range of possibilities, we can also have the ability to experience broader consciousness. That's how we understand the laws of nature. We think about philosophy and we create music and art and we think like we're thinking together. That is all broadening awareness and bringing to light different aspects of reality. So We take humans out not in the sense of removing them from the equation, but from the sense of saying consciousness is not just human-like consciousness. You can have a consciousness of a cat. You can have a consciousness of a dog. So you can have different, you can even as a human, as we said, have different states of your consciousness.
Right.
And so the beauty about this is that there is a technology, there is a system, there is a way to broaden one's consciousness. There is a way to expand one's awareness. So it's not just something theoretical, oh, that's nice to talk about, but there is actually a system, a technique that helps us to become better, to grow, to expand our awareness. One of these techniques is listening to Osi's podcast, for example. You broaden your awareness, you look at things from different perspectives. Another technique is maybe some relaxation technique, some mindfulness technique. And transcending, going beyond all of these layers is the most profound and powerful technique in my research and my perspective and my analysis, because it takes you to that ocean of being, to that field of consciousness, and allows you to experience that field, which is infinite and unbounded and the source of all that there is.
Wow. Yeah. I'm curious how you think this ties into, because what I find really fascinating is how you know the things that all the different religions agree on, I think is what I find really fascinating. Obviously there's differing opinions on who to worship and how to worship and all that stuff, but for the most part, most religions agree with some form of an afterlife, some form of a reality that goes beyond our body. And I'm curious, like how do you think this ties into like understanding consciousness? Like what do you think like some of these early religions are trying to tackle? Like does that to you sound like there's this like heightened awareness of consciousness and this potential reality past our physical bodies? I'm just curious like what your personal thoughts are on, because I just find the concept of an afterlife just fascinating, you know?
Yeah, afterlife, as you say, in different belief system and spiritual traditions and beliefs, have been seen in different ways, and they all agree that there is something more than just the physical body,
Mhm.
and that is their common belief in a soul or a spirit or a consciousness that is beyond the material, and that does not dissolve or go away when this material body goes away.
Mhm.
Now, in this paradigm, we don't bring it on the level of religion or belief system, but on the level of a scientific analysis of how consciousness emerges into different realities,
Right.
which says that even our body is part of a dynamics of consciousness, and that every action that we do has a reaction and has a consequences, and all of that explains the dynamics of life and living, and even the forces of nature, why there is for every action a reaction, why you can't create a positive charge without creating a negative charge. And I discuss this in the book to show the reason for why things happen. So to make a long story short, long story is explained in the book, we can't take, is that if you create certain actions and disturbances in the field of consciousness as a human being or as anything, you have to have a reaction to that. And so that action and reaction is fundamental in the dynamics of consciousness and the entanglement, the interconnection between different aspects of the what appears as a physical universe, which of course in this paradigm is itself uh, a dynamics of consciousness itself. But leaving this besides, there is a change in the dynamics. So the solution that is most logical is that when you depart the physical reality, you still have created a certain set of dynamics due to your actions, due to your behavior, due to your decision. You have impacted the field in a certain way. And that impact is not going just to disappear because your physical body disappeared. And that is what will remain. And so you will say, what will happen to that? That dynamic, that entity, you can call it the soul or the being or whatever, or the consciousness of that mind or that spirit or whatever it is. What will happen is in different religions are different ways of explaining it. Either you sit somewhere and you wait for a time when you'll be, rewarded or punished or whatever, or you actually get rewarded and punished by continuing the process of reaction. So, in my perspective, planet Earth for us is heaven and hell at the same time. It's it's the reward and the punishment. There is no place else. And in my analysis, again, based on just logic and reasoning, is that we come back after we leave the body in a new form. And this shouldn't be in contradiction with anybody, because if some belief system says, well, you go and you get punished, or you go and you get rewarded for what you've done, then, well, that's what happens. You come back here and you get either punished or rewarded. But mainly, I don't see it in terms of punishing or rewarding. I see it in terms of giving you the chance to evolve. So every situation brings you back in order to learn more. And sometimes when this question is asked, I give this example, which is maybe a bit mundane. But if you play a game, a shooter game, if of course, everyone knows the shooter game. So you buy the game and you start, you get killed, usually very quickly at the beginning.
Right.
Then you start again, and this time maybe you make a few steps more, and then again, and you keep learning, and you keep changing, and you keep playing until you actually are able to win the game. Ultimately,
Right.
that's the goal. Now, that is giving you every time a chance, and when you come back with what you have learned before. I think nobody would buy a game if from the first time you get killed, it's done. Now you have you have to wait for like eternity until you get either the reward or the punishment. Nobody will make money on such a game.
Right.
So I don't think God, if you like to believe in God, whatever, would create a game where from the first time you lose, your first trial, you lose. God will not make much money on that.
Right. I like that. I really like that analogy. Um, Man, and when talking about like achieving higher states of consciousness, I think this is something that people are desperately looking to experience. I think in our everyday lives, maybe you're working a job or something you don't like, or you're just stuck in a routine, and you're just asking yourself like is there more to this existence and life? Like we're all trying to feel some type of heightened consciousness. And I'm curious like what you think the difference is between achieving that maybe through something like a psychedelic drug versus something like transcendental meditation or some type of other meditation. Does how you achieve that consciousness in that higher state matter, and why in your opinion?
I think it matters a lot to be honest and candid about it.
Mm,
You can have moments of experience that are great, but it's not, as you say it, as you put it, is not achieving higher states of consciousness.
mm,
It's experiencing some moments which shows you that there is more, to life, that there is more to potential of experience than what you're experiencing in a daily living. Unfortunately, with drugs and hallucinogenics and psychedelics, the experience is momentary, and then there is a drop, and then there is habituation, and then there is kind of addiction, and there is increase in dose, increase in dose. And the experience in general shows that the person is not so much operating properly in society and contributing to their life and their fulfillment. And this is scientific research. It's not an opinion. It's just follow up on statistics and all of that. So if one has some experience sometime or something, that's fine. Okay, great. It gives you the idea that if your nervous system was to work in a different way, you'd be able to get some wonderful experience, and life can be blissful and can be great. The problem is you want it to happen in an organized, systematic way, in a natural way that grows with you gradually. It takes a little time, but it could be even immediate. And that's what I found in transcendental meditation to be absolutely great and amazing. And that is what we have found again scientifically and statistically, and follow up of people through, like, now we have 80 years of scientific research on transcendental meditation. And that is showing that you have those experiences, but they also give you greater strengths, greater ability to function, greater ability to perform, to be creative, to actually succeed in life. And so the experience is not just momentary, but it becomes stable, and higher states of consciousness become states for achievement, for performance, for success, even in the physical field of life. So you'll have this way what we call 200% of life, 100% inner experience, but also 100% success in the outer world.
Hmm. Wow. And you've been, I know you've been around the world, and you've worked with so many different people, introduced these topics to so many people. I'm curious, like, why on a cultural level, why do you think it's Americans, or I guess maybe Western culture as a whole, but definitely Americans specifically, seem to, when talking about things like anxiety or stress or something, we seem to have a lot of belief in physical remedies, like we like to think that like a pill can solve these things. And I mean, at least in my own personal opinion, I think when something is disrupting your soul, the best that a pill can do is blunt that maybe emptiness, and turn you into this like kind of emotionless thing. But it's probably not going to actually fix your problems or heighten your consciousness to a level that really addresses the issue. But that seems to be what we here in the West, for the most part, believe in the most and rely on the most, which is medication. And something tells me that things like meditation, because it's been framed as something that's culturally, comes from another part of the world, or is not rooted in science or pharmaceutical industry, that for some reason we seem less receptive to things like meditation. I'm just curious, like what your thoughts are on that, and what do you think it would take for us in the West to embrace things like transcendental meditation, and not only to embrace those things, but to embrace those things before reaching for the pill or whatever that we think is going to fix the problem.
I think you summarized it wonderfully. It's really, I would be repeating what you said in a sense. It's really exactly like you did it, you said it. And, there are at the beginning cultural changes, but I want to come back to my optimism. You called it optimism. And I feel like things are coming along. This
Mm-hmm.
World Meditation Day is a great hope. That's, 193 states, countries in the world voted unanimously to have a meditation day. And people are more and more interested in how the mind can change the body and how we can use these techniques of the mind to improve our physiology, our mind, our well-being, etc. So the question of like drugs and anxiety, drugs and depression, etc., is, an extension, but much milder than what we discussed in terms of hallucinogenic or psychedelic and all of that. Those create a higher kind of experience, and those they dampen something for a time being. And sometimes, when you have an urgent case, an immediate case, then you should follow your doctor's advice and take the medicine. So that is a statement of saying that I'm not saying to stop your medicine in any way. That should follow your doctor's advice. And so in any case, you can, while following your doctor's advice, why not try something softer, something healthier, something easier to do, even something simpler to do? And gradually you will see that your doctor will start reducing your medicine, and then you will be feeling better if you are experiencing such things. And it's very interesting because the statistics are showing that the young generation now in the world is facing huge mental problems and mental challenges. And so, we can just throw drugs at them to kind of patch it, hide it. It's like if you have a problem in your knee, let's say an inflammation or something, and you take a pain pill, it covers the pain. It's great. It's nice to cover the pill, but would be nicer to cover the pain. But what is nicer is if you remove the inflammation, you find a way to reduce the inflammation also. So you treat the root cause rather than patch the thing from the surface. And the mind is a very powerful tool that has, we have seen and we have studied, that has very great effect on the nervous system, which itself can influence the endocrine system, which means the system that releases hormones. And the endocrine system can influence the immune system and the inflammatory aspects of the body. And so if we take good rest, if we have a good routine, if we have good habits in life, if we practice a relaxation technique like transcendental meditation, which takes us to very deep relaxation, very deep healing, then we are able to heal ourselves from the inside. So my optimism is that whatever is true will always survive, as we said. And this is true and effective, and it doesn't contradict any belief system, doesn't contradict any scientific finding. It adds this value of the mind, of consciousness, in terms of a healing tool to help us feel better, be better. And sometimes, medicines are necessary, absolutely necessary, at least in a bridge between the time we start practicing those mental techniques. And so we don't run away from them, but we prepare ourselves and we heal ourselves through proper diet, proper exercise, proper daily routine, good meditation. The mind is clear, consciousness broadens, we see things clearly, there is less fear, less anxiety, and we can use our potential in the best possible way to get the most out of what life is to offer.
Absolutely. Man, my last question for you here today, and before I ask that, I just again just thank you for your time. I've loved this conversation, and I just appreciate all the insights that you're offering. But my last question for you is for, someone listening to this right now, maybe they want to maybe they're listening to this because they're looking for resources and ways to just elevate their life, elevate themselves. I think one of the hardest parts, like in my own research, sometimes like some of the hardest things to come across is just like where do I start? Like where do I start in wanting to elevate my thoughts, elevate my way of thinking and understanding consciousness? just from and I feel like you're the most qualified person in the world to answer this question. So where does one start who is introducing these things that we've talked about maybe to their lives for the first time?
I think it's not necessarily necessary to start with even going deep into intellectual dive. What is most helpful actually is to go immediately into an experiential dive. And for that, you need to practice something that will show you that actually things are better. And at the same time, gives you the logic and the understanding. So we have to be first convinced in order to do something. And the scientific research, the discussions that we have, hopefully will give strong, uh, convincing arguments that transcending, meditating is very important. It's really important. And I say it in the sense that it's not just a luxury or an additional thing. In the same way as it is important to sleep and dream and waking, and there is cycles of this, and all of them give good aspects to life and health. Transcending, using transcendental meditation, meditating is a very important part, and it's only 20 minutes morning and evening. It's not like a big deal. And you don't have to change your belief systems. You don't have to ask yourself or convince yourself. You have to be, don't have to be, hard about to yourself. Don't be actually hard towards yourself. Love yourself, accept yourself, know that there is technology and ways that simply by using them, things will be better. You will wake up clearer, you will feel better, and you will achieve more. And for that, there is a program which we have. You can check to learn transcendental meditation at a site called tm.org, TM for Transcendental Meditation, tm.org. If you are the kind who likes to think more about things and analyze them and see how it works and why it works, we have the Consciousness is All There Is book that I welcome you, of course, to have and to read. And a new small book, which is great also, it's called Super Habits for Success, that I have just released with some of my colleagues, that helps you to understand your body type, your tendencies, and adjust your habits so that you get the proper habits for success and how to, integrate, for example, proper diet, proper exercise in a simple way. Because oftentimes we are hard on ourselves and we don't know why. It's can't do it. I know I have to exercise. I can't do it. I know I have to have a good diet. I can't do it. So habits are very important. I know I have to meditate. I'm not doing it. So this is why we produced this book, this helpful book, that will be one way to start also. We have a program called Consciousness Advisor Program, which you can check out. I have a website, the drtonynader.com. So you can check me out on the internet. You can check Transcendental Meditation. You can buy these books, and you can start practicing and seeing everyday life becoming better.
Amazing. Well, Doc, I again just thank you. I think yeah, it's uh I'm always interested in ways that we can elevate our thinking, we can help ourselves and navigate the craziness of modern life. And yeah, so I just appreciate you coming on the podcast and talking to the people so much. So again, just thank you for your time. And for people listening, of course, I appreciate it if you make it to the end as usual. But that is all we got for you today. Peace, and until next episode. Bye.